What's up, everybody? This is TJ McClellan, broker of Fitness Realty, back for another sweet podcast episode. But first, I wanted to say thank you to everybody that's always supporting us. We love you, we appreciate you, and let's get started in today's episode. So, next to me, I've got Garth Haslem, and he's running a podcast that's called Manalizing, which I wanted to showcase today. So, thank you, Garth, for being here. How are you?
A sweet podcast. I love the sweet podcast. I don't know how
Right.
sweet I am, TJ, but it's safe to call this a podcast anyway.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm doing good. I'm sitting here underneath my garage. I got my Jeep above me. There's a structural slab between me and my Jeep, and it's kind of cool in here. Feeling good.
Nice. Well, that is awesome. Well, give us a little bit of background about you. How long have you lived in Utah? Like some cool personal facts that maybe we can connect with you.
Okay, so lived in Utah all my life, moved a million times.
Nice.
But I was born in Orem, and I've lived in my adult life. I've lived in Riverton, and then Highland and Lehigh, and now Saratoga Springs. I lived in Bountiful for a while, and you know what I decided? The further away you are from the mountain, the less snow you get.
Yeah,
I'm okay
that's
with
fair.
that. It's
Right.
okay for the rest of you guys to get snowed on. I don't want to shovel my snow so much.
Yeah. No, that's 100%. Well,
Yeah.
where at in Saratoga Springs? I'm just curious because we might be neighbors.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the south end. You know where the golf course is.
Okay, yep. So you're like south of Talon's Cove?
Yeah, I'm between Talon's Cove and the lake.
Nice. Okay, cool. I love that
So,
area. So where I'm at is the very top of the lake in North Shore, or if you know
mhm,
the development called North Shore. Yep.
right. Yeah, we are kind of sort of neighbors.
Yep. Yeah, close enough. I think people, whenever we say Saratoga Springs, sometimes people feel like, oh, that's like deep west, and I'm like, well, it's not Eagle Mountain, like it's not that west.
But, I had the same thought way back in the day when we lived in Highland, and I mentioned that I'd driven Redwood Road
Uh-huh.
all the way from, like Santaquin. You take that backside and how beautiful it was, and there was some
Yep.
cool places to be. And my wife goes, "I don't want to live out there." But
Uh,
I wake up every morning, and the 10,000 geese that are outside my window, they're honking at me, and sometimes that's a good thing.
yeah,
But
for
the
sure.
views are crazy awesome,
The views
and
are crazy awesome.
yeah, yeah, it's a good life. I don't think you could get me and my wife out of here and back to Orem for any amount of money.
Yeah, I like that. Well, something that's interesting. Did anyone tell you before you bought about hunting season? Because
Oh
nobody
yeah.
nobody told me and my wife about hunting season. And like our first year here, we were like, "There's gunshots outside," and then we were like, "What is happening?" Like, is this the just the hoodlum ranch or what? And then somebody was like, "No, it's hunting season, like bird hunt and stuff." And I was like, "Okay, that makes sense."
When I moved here, and I heard the hunting. There was a couple days ago where it sounded like Fourth of July fireworks, blam 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 blam.
Yep, right.
And at first, when I moved here, I was like, "You're killing my geese," and lately it's more like, "Please, more,
Right.
kill more, give me
Yeah,
another
right.
100."
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. Uh, well, give us a little background, like w- give us a background about what Manalizing is and how you started the channel. Like, how did you just get the idea to like run a podcast in the first place, and how did that whole thing start?
So I'm going to go a little deeper than I typically go on this one because you asked the question that way.
Yes.
I was asked by a friend of mine to go to a podcast conference in Florida. And he's a friend who has been unemployed for 5 years. He's insanely gifted, but when it comes to getting stuff done himself as an entrepreneur, he prevents himself. And I have tried every way from Sunday to help him push the ball, to take the ball from him, to hand the ball to somebody else. So that he can move forward in his life. And every time I met with resistance that just really left me frustrated. So he now he invites me to go to this podcaster conference, and I'm like, yeah, I've got a podcast about home medic, but that's about home stuff, and I'm not passionate about it. But if this guy is going to do something, I'll support it. So off we go to Florida, and I had a little voice in the back of my head that says, you are going to benefit from this more than he is.
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, right. How am I going to benefit from this? Home medic has been there, done that, and whatever.
Yeah.
And so I get there, and people start asking me what my podcast is. I'm like, I don't want to tell them about home medic. That's boring. We're talking about asbestos. We're talking about lead-based paint and raccoons and spiders and roofing and electrical and plumbing. Who cares? Been there.
Yeah.
It's all recorded 3 times over. And something somebody said, it was about how isolated and lonely we men all are, and how when a woman's got an issue, she's got 30 girlfriends to go talk to. When a man's got an issue, he's got a checkbox. First, if he can't talk to his wife, and usually he can't or won't, there goes checkbox number 1. Your second option is go talk to another woman about what you can't talk to with your wife about. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, that's not good. And the third option is go talk to another man. That, if we need to cry on somebody's shoulder, if we need to tell somebody how we're hurting, it's like, no, not going to happen either. So instead, we shove it down, we keep it in, we become trash compactors. And at some point, the trash compactor is full, and then it's over full, and then it explodes.
Whoa.
And the explosion always happens at the wrong time in the wrong place with the wrong person. Somebody who doesn't deserve the explosion. And it's kind of sad. I heard a statistic that 3 out of 4 men, and I don't know if I even believe this statistic, but it's supposed to be true. I don't know how you measure this, but 3 out of 4 men have recently considered suicide.
Whoa. Yeah. I don't doubt that right now.
You don't doubt that. I've talked to some other people who also say they don't doubt that.
Yeah.
I interview guys. I interview random guys. And you and I just met when I showed up to do a presentation on mold.
Right.
Because you're a realtor and I'm a recovering home inspector.
Nice.
And so, I was there talking about mold with another guy who I'm bringing him in and kind of mentoring him as the home inspector. And so I met you, and that's kind of the way that that this works for me, is I run into people almost randomly, and they always have such great stories to tell. The last guy I talked to, for example, this was a kid who's like 25. He just bought a few Dirty Dough franchises, which is how I met him. Dirty Dough's bunch is cookies like crumble.
Yep.
And he's a good-looking kid. You can see he's athletic, very smart. I found out in the podcast he didn't get, what is that, where they give you an award in high school for being excessively smart? It's like
an honor roll, or
yeah, only more than that. You have the one guy who's smarter than everybody else. Anyway. He was third in line for that competition, and the only reason he didn't win it is because somebody else took one more honors class than he did.
Gotcha.
So he felt betrayed, but that's another story, because the guy who did it was his friend. This guy has the smarts, he has the athleticism, he has the looks, he got the girls, and he's got the money. Other than that, his life is trash, right? You know, there is nothing. There is nothing else as far as I can say. I can't name anything else other than he married the wrong woman, and it was her second divorce. She decided to lose him, and he was so distraught over that he went up American Fork Canyon. And the way he tells the story, he had his foot on the brake and a gun to his head. He had the car in neutral, so the idea, and he had the car pointed down so that when he took his foot off the brake, the car would roll down the hill, and that would be how they would find him. He put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger, and to his disgust and dismay, the safety was on.
Oh, wow.
So obviously he didn't do it again, but he drove down the hill all disgusted with himself because he said he knew how to use a gun.
Right.
And his name is Enrique, and I can tell the story because he told it to the world through my podcast.
Yeah.
Another guy that I interviewed just recently, he said that he was going to commit suicide, but he didn't because he figured nobody would care. He didn't have enough friends to commit suicide for. He wanted somebody to care that he was dead, and he knew they wouldn't, so he didn't. And these are guys that I run into randomly.
Yeah.
And it's just heartbreaking. At the same time, the podcast isn't dark. There's a lot of light and hope associated with it. In addition to the podcast, the reason why the podcast exists is so other guys can understand that there is hope, that there's others who are in the same dark hole that we're in. I had my day of being suicidal. I knew exactly, I was planning exactly how I was going to do it. And, my life right now is far from a place where I would be suicidal. I've kind of got everything going for me right now. Life is good for me.
That's amazing.
But so the podcast is about hope. And then we have groups that we're putting together that I'm calling Manalizing tribes.
Cool.
And that's where, the question is, how do you find a man whose shoulder you can cry on? How do you find a man where if your daughter is suicidal, maybe you can talk to somebody about that? How do you find a man where, in my case, one of my kids was considering having an abortion? Well, she actually did. A couple of them that I found out about later. I did have somebody I could talk to. I stumbled across the street and I fell in his arms. I said, "She's killing my grandchildren." And at that moment, I had somebody I could cry on his shoulder with. But I was a mess, and most of us guys don't have one person we can do that with.
Right.
And that's what Manalizing is. That's a long answer to your short question, but that's what it's about.
Yeah. I really like how powerful that is, though. I mean, connections through stories can really help us learn that we're not alone, for one, and number two, I think that where your motives are to help people understand that is just so powerful, because men don't have connections, and we're seeing that kind of get trashed online and on social media, and just like in everyday society, where it's like, oh, you have a problem, you should just go bottle it up and sit in a corner, and it's like, well, that's not going to help, and so we need to have connection as men, and I like that. It's pretty powerful. I have a little background or a little story for that as well, just to kind of piggyback on what you said is there's a guy that I ran into, Richard Paul Evans, who started a men's group a while ago, the Tribe of Kings, and so I was in that group, and it was amazing. But it also just gets hard to get men to come around and do stuff because we get so busy and we're just carrying everybody else's burdens, and we don't actually go to something to feel connected. And so, but I really enjoyed the environment that that's created. And so, when you talked about the Manalizing tribes, that's really fascinating to me, and just something that I feel a passion for is helping men connect. Because I think that being vulnerable as a man is you have to share stuff and be open to sharing and open to listening, because most men don't listen at all either, so we're not that good of listeners, or we don't train to be good listeners. We train to, like, tell me your problem, let me fix it. But then when we can't
Right.
fix something that's out of our control, then it gets hard, and that's when we all get frustrated. And so we need that connection with men to be better. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's funny when you try to fix a woman, you get killed.
Fair.
But as men, we're open to solutions, and if it's done in the right way. For example,
Right.
I went through a divorce 20 years ago, and not surprisingly, I was in a dark place for part of it. So
Yeah.
I went to the one guy I was closest to. I actually hadn't seen him even once a year, but he was the guy I was closest to. Um, and he'd been a friend through all of my school years, and he lived a few miles away. So he had a glass shop, and he actually told this story to me because I'd forgotten it. Um, but I set him up for failure. He was
Mm-hmm.
working. He had an earpiece on so that he could install glass and answer phones at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I show up and I try to tell him about my divorce while he's installing glass and answering his phones.
Oh man.
And so I quickly realized I was in third place and I wasn't going to be able to get the support that I needed. So I said, well, I got to go. And I left. And then I forgot about it. And he told me
Yeah.
that story.
Oh wow.
Um, so, that's another thing that us men do is we don't know how to listen. It's uncomfortable to listen, and we don't know what listening really looks like.
Right.
I'm sure he was uncomfortable too. He's like, hey, I know how to install glass and answer phones, but what you're talking to
Right.
me about, never done this before, and I'm not sure I know how to do it.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with that. Well, and on Manalizing, do you guys have things that kind of maybe walk us through what that looks like? Do you share how we can be more open about listening? What does that look like?
So the podcast itself is the word expose comes to mind. It basically just it reassures us all because, one guy is going to be ex-military with PTSD. Another is
Mm-hmm.
going to be, he described himself, the one I'm thinking of, as a guy who has been isolated all of his life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another one is the guy whose daughter was considering suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the pain is usually from a different source. There's a different story behind it, but the pain
Mm-hmm.
itself is the same. And so
Right.
my goal with the podcast itself is just to let guys tell their story. There's
Oh, that's
another
cool.
one, Howard Snow, really cool guy. If you meet him, um, he was a coach, a coach for like football and the drama coach. You don't expect
Mm.
that guy to be the same person.
Yeah, for sure. That's an interesting skill set.
But he's got cancer that will kill him. It should have killed him already. He's got leg issues. He's got all of these issues. He knows he's going to die.
Yeah.
Um, and he talks about that. And yet he doesn't want anybody to feel sorry for him. He
Right.
wants just to live his life until he's not alive anymore. And for me, that was inspiring to talk to him too. So you get all these different guys with all this different pain. Another one of the kids I interviewed, he's barely 20,
Mm-hmm.
and he grew up without a dad. and he talked about how painful that was for him and what
Yeah.
he did to try and fill that hole. Of course, you can't fill a hole without a dad,
Right.
but he talked about what he did. And, that taught me something. It's like, it's not just the guys who are 40, 50, 60, whatever, who have damage.
Right.
Everybody's got damage.
Yeah.
And we all, I've never interviewed anybody yet who's like, yeah, I'm good.
Right. Yeah. No. We all have life, right? Like, I mean, that's the name of the game, you
Yeah.
know?
And we all, and this still just blows me away, we all are desperate for connection.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that going through COVID really showcased that. Like, humans don't do well when we're isolated in physical spaces, and we don't do well when we're isolated in mental spaces, you know? So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm talking about all this desperation, but for me, it's a very bright thing because the answer is pretty much always the same. We're putting together tribes of guys with cancer, uh, tribes of guys whose wives have cancer,
Mm-hmm.
tribe guys who, maybe there's PTSD or they were a cop. One of the guys I interviewed, he was a cop, and same sort of a scenario. He said that he did, let's see, narcotics, prostitution, and sex trafficking. That was
Mm-hmm.
his specialty. And he says that he came home one day and told his wife that he'd just rescued half a dozen 6-year-olds from sex slavery.
Oh,
And his wife goes, "Stop. I can't. Don't tell me about that. That's too much for me."
yeah.
So he goes through the checklist, and there is nobody else he can talk to about this.
Right.
So he turns to Jack Daniels.
Mm.
And you know how that turns out.
Right. Which is a very common coping mechanism.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Jack is fourth on the list. That's who you can turn to.
Right.
Um, and so the bright spot in all of this is that, hey, that is dark. It's all kinds of heavy, but there's
Yeah.
a solution, and it's not that hard to find. And we can change the world by doing this. It's not just about the man himself. The man is going to bottle all this up. He's going to make good friends with Jack. And then there's going to be all these victims. The wife and family will be victims. Whoever else might be involved is going to be victims. There may be suicide. There may be abuse. There may be, drug and alcohol. Maybe there's porn. Um,
Mm-hmm.
all these addictions that can be avoided, which not only saves the man, it saves the family, and it ends the cycle of victimhood for
Right.
everybody. So I'm pretty passionate about it.
I like
Yeah.
that a lot. I like how much passion you have in your voice about it. Because that's always authentic, you know. I always like interviewing and talking to authentic people, and so I hope everybody can hear that, you know, about having a place that we can all kind of go and listen and hear some of the same stories that we might have, or you know, hear how people have overcome, or just getting it all out, right? Like just sharing your story and getting it all out. Sometimes that's what's needed, you know. And so I really think that you're on a warpath to really help a lot of people, which I'm just excited about. And I think that um, you know, you've found the thing that gets you out of bed in the day or in the morning, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I love the term warpath. I'm going to keep that one. But
Yeah, for
yes,
sure.
at 62, um, I love that I'm in a place now where I can do what I want to do as opposed to what I need to do to make a nickel. You know,
Right.
I do structural inspections still. I don't do home inspections anymore. And the difference is the structural inspections are more structural engineering related. And I can make more than enough money in not very much time, and the rest of my time is manalizing. I
Yeah.
love that I'm in that place. I think I've been put in that place, again, divine guidance. I think I've been put in that place so that I have the time to do what I need to do.
Right.
It's good stuff for me. And so now at 62, it kind of feels like a retirement. At this point, I am doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I love that.
That is so cool. I'm kind of prompted to share this with my mom always says timing is everything. Um, and I just feel like this is the perfect time for you to do that. I mean, you've gotten into a place where you actually have the free time to do so, to connect with other men and to connect with other people is just that's just huge. So I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, and I'm always grateful for people that are chasing their passions, um, and very grateful for people that make life better for other people. And so I just wanted to say how grateful I am for what you're doing, and and just want to encourage you to keep doing it because I know it it may not seem like things happen all the time, and it may not seem like the connections are that good, um, or sometimes some people still go off the deep end, you know. But what you're doing is going to be powerful and help other people is amazing. So I wanted to say thank you.
Likewise. Yeah, what you're doing allows this kind of thing to happen. And I'm looking forward to turning the tables on you and interviewing you as my next victim. I mean, guest.
Right? Yeah, right. Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. So for everybody out there, I will be on Manalizing podcast. Probably eventually. I don't know when it will air, but I'm gonna be on there getting interviewed by Garth. So I'm excited to share some of my stories. Um, as many people know on here, I was active duty military. I'm still in the National Guard now, but we're gonna share some fun stories about that and some deep, dark, nasty stories that I don't think. I mean, I've shared it with some people, and I don't think I've really shared it on a podcast. And so I'm so excited and nervous to be open and vulnerable about that. So I think it's going to be intense.
You know, it's funny, TJ. As the interviewer, I am never nervous to get on and interview somebody else. Twice now, I've been the interviewee,
Uh-huh.
and both times I get a little nervous about being on that side of the table.
Right? Oh, it's so
But
fun.
it's good stuff.
Right? Oh, it's so cool.
Okay,
Well,
thank you, sir.
yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate where you're going and what you're doing. So I just wanted to say thank you one more time. All right, everybody. So this was episode 76. I've got Garth Haslem with me. Go out and check out Manalizing on Apple, Spotify, everywhere. It is awesome. I just want to make sure that you guys know there is room for you to connect. There is awesome opportunities for everyone to hear these stories, and realize that we're not all alone. You know, like men need connection as well, and the quicker that us men can realize that, I think that the world can be a better place. And so, well, just one more time, Garth, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Have a good one, TJ.
All right, thanks.